All right, our last presentation. Y'all stuck it out. I'm so proud. You did great. Data-driven decisions based on operational and financial record keeping. Mr. Rusty Reeves began his career with Louisiana Rural Water Association in September of '97 in the Louisiana Compliance Initiative Program. In May of 2001, he began working as a water circuit rider. In 2009, he worked as one of the ARRA circuit riders until March of 2010, at which time he began working the EPA Training and Technical Assistance Program as the training specialist for LRWA. In 2005, Rusty received an NRWA Circuit Rider Peer Leadership Award. Rusty is a registered circuit rider through the National Rural Water Association and Utility Management, certified through the National Rural Water, that's a lot, that's really hard to say. That's a lot. Water Association, Water University. Rusty holds a Class 4 certification in water production, treatment, and distribution, as well as Class 1 wastewater collection and treatment through the Louisiana Department of Health Operator Certification Program. Please welcome Mr. Rusty Reeves.
Thank you, and thank y'all for the opportunity to be here today. It's an honor and a privilege. I'm following a pretty big act, folks. Mr. Battle laid out a bunch of things that affects everything we do every day. I remember the day I met Amanda Ames when she worked for the health department. I remember the morning Amanda Ames called me December 21 in 2016 and said, call Leslie Durham. We got a problem you can help us with. I remember Leslie and I not having real good conversations that morning. She's telling me it can't be done till Friday, and I'm saying it's got to be done Thursday. That went on most of the morning between Leslie and I. And she said, you don't understand, the money won't be there by Thursday. I said, the leak will be fixed. The people who's been out of water for 3 weeks will have water by Christmas. We're going to talk about data-driven decisions. On December the 19th of 2016, that little water system, with the customers upset because they didn't have water for 3 weeks, the clerk said, I don't know what they mad about. I ain't had no water either for 3 weeks. Folks, we got to be honest with our data. We got to be straightforward because it ain't just us we playing with. It is the public that we playing with. And I usually show a picture of my 3-year-old granddaughter. She's 13 now, 12 now, drinking water out of a faucet out of her bare hands, because that's the ones that we here to protect the most. Not my job, not your job, not the mayor's position, not the board's president's position. Those that cannot fend for themselves, the infants and the elderly. And when we let our stuff deteriorate to the point that it's got to be totally replaced, we can't afford it because we didn't maintain it. I see people drive cars that's 35, 40 years old. They put a little money in it every year and kept it going. Most of us today, they just go buy a new one every 10 years and pay for it over a 6 or 7 year period. We're going to talk about them data-driven decisions that face our water systems and wastewater systems today. And as we look at that, how often do we make a system-related decision? How often do you make a decision on your water system or your wastewater system? Every hour? Every day? Once a month? Who does decisions affect? You know, a lot of times we make a decision, well, we're going to close the office on Friday because there's nobody comes in and the office staff needs a day off. And I know I'm saying some little petty things, but I mean, who did we really make the decision for? Did we say, well, it's going to cut down on expenses? And how much is it going to cut back on expenses? Did we really look at that, analyze that part? How long is your decision effective for? I mean, during COVID, we've had to make some decisions that was 30-day decisions, 60-day decisions, 90-day decisions. But overall, when we make decisions for our water system, wastewater system, we're usually making decisions that's going to affect our grandchildren's grandchildren's. And people say, well, I ain't going to borrow no money because I don't want to put my grandchildren in debt. What do you want them to drink? The same junk you've been drinking? Out of wore out pipes? The decisions, how long is that effective for? Why do we make decisions? Why do we make a decision? Why? Because somebody figured out how to get around our system we have, didn't pay their bill on time, but still kept their water? What drives us to make decisions? I tell people all the time, for every policy developed, there was a situation that caused it. You know, even when you look at the auditing practices with the standard agreed upon auditing procedures that they look at now, there was issues that happened that caused them to have to look deeper. And it happens in everything, folks. And what are our decisions based off of? Do we make decisions based off of, well, that sounds like a good idea? Did we get all the information? You know, I go back to my opening story. The clerk was 3 weeks without water. She should have been the first one jumping up and down, not the last one. You know, I attended many meetings before we got there. I attended a meeting one night, and a lady in there, because the clerk's telling them, we got to knock on somebody's door to get money. And she's tugging on my pants like, what door we need to be knocking on? And I'm like, you knocking on the door right now. That lady wound up getting on the board about 8 months later for 2 hours. They swore in at the beginning of the meeting, and she resigned at the end. Oh, by the way, that water system's owned by another water system today. They out of business. But you understand? That lady's goal was to get on the board, but once she got on there, I can't put up with all this stuff. So what's our decisions based on? Why? Some of the common things we see, and Mr. Mike covered a bunch of this in the SAVE presentation that he was talking about, is the communication between the different levels in the organizational structure. Sometimes some systems have real good communications. Things run like a champ. Everything goes good. And other times it's a constant battle. I ain't going to share that information with him because he'll know what I do, or her, or whoever. A lot of times we find that management and decision makers lacks the knowledge of the water and sewer regulations and other requirements. You know, I've sat in meetings and heard it, well, when are they going to make me do it? Well, we don't really go down that rabbit trail, folks. We really don't want to, because you just, in my book, you just said, I don't care what my people drink. I ain't doing it till somebody makes me do it. I'm not here for the betterment. I'm here to stand my ground. A lot of times there's no written policies or procedures in place. Or if they are in place, they're written so vaguely that you really can't make a decision off of. And if you really have true written policies and procedures, a lot of things should never even make it to the board level. But a lot of times I attend meetings and the discussions over a policy, well, this is the way we think it should be. That's the reason we set a policy, to have clear direction. A lot of times the office and support personnel normally do not come to a training session. So they don't know about these new regulations. I mean, I would like to see a show of hands of how many clerks found out that you had to have a lead service line inventory put together by October the 16th and found out after January this year. And how long we've been talking about that, Amanda? For about 3 years. Somebody from your system knew it. They just didn't come forward and say, hey, I'm going to need a little help with this. As we start working and looking at things and we start on the data, I find that data's in different areas every time you go for something. And when I start thinking about what's based on the management part, is your profit and loss reports, your monthly financial reports, your annual audit reports, the loan and grant requirements, historical records, your policies and procedures, your complaint log. That's management handles that. Yeah, your audit report and your profit and loss reports, that should be shared with your board every month, and it should be discussed. You know, I've attended some board meetings. They put it, well, I accept the financial report as presented. Nobody asked, well, what was this $2,000 for? And clerks and administrators, if they asking what things is for that's on that financial report, they have a concern. And they're not trying to micromanage. Because I can promise you, I've seen more people leave their position because they couldn't keep their hands off the money. They could not verify what it was for. That's kind of like in a cabinet of its own. You got to have the key to get to this information that's on this screen right here. Or you got to know the clerk or somebody. It should be shared and worked throughout the group, because it's the team that has to put this water system together, keep it running, the wastewater system, keep it going. Also, we find the monthly billing reports, the customer count, the customer records, the current rates. In the accountability rule, LDH allowed 5 points if you had a rate study conducted in the last 5 years. Pretty good incentive. You know how many rate studies we had to go dig up and find the records for systems that we've conducted in the last 5 years because they didn't know what they'd done with their rate study? We know you done one. Can you find it? Folks, that's supposed to be a record that you keeping, because that's what you charging your customers. That's data that should be available. For if a board member or customer asks, that you can tell them, well, December the 18th, 2022, we done a rate increase. We increased them by 25% because we were going to do this project, or just because cost of living went up, or whatever. Rate classifications. I'm a pretty simple fella. It's all the same water. I think you should have a inside rate and an outside rate, residential and commercial. But I see people got a school rate, cemetery rate, prison rate, police jury rate, industrial more than 250,000 gallons, they don't use but 125,000 on average. What I'm saying, folks, you're making things way too complicated. And your clerk, when they come in there, it's her responsibility to figure out what rate they go on. But it's all the same water. And I realize some of y'all have a sales tax that helps support it. And I understand that. I understand that. But all these rate classifications, you know, I done one here a while back, at apartment complex 4 or more, apartment complex 20 or more. Now, one thing I have to say with them, they did at least make it 4 times the minimum and 20 times the minimum. Not like some that just said, well, we're going to charge them another $10 because they got 20 units. They made the rate justified to the users. Delinquent accounts. Who has that record? How many of y'all can get y'all meters disconnected in a timely manner when it comes for disconnects? Or how many of y'all it takes weeks sometimes because, oh, I just didn't have time, or put it off to another day? Folks, that's everybody's money. That's not just your money or the operator's money. That's everybody's money. And what you don't collect in a delinquent account, I pay for, or your neighbor pays for it, go down the line. Rate study results. I don't know how many people got a rate study done just so they could say they had one done for the accountability rule, but they never implemented the rates. That was kind of a dumb thing, because the second part of that little deal says, and are operate at a sustainable level. You had a rate study done that you adopted a 0.9 sustainability. That's not sustainable. You ain't even breaking even. So you lost 5 points on the other end. I mean, so you gathered all this data to lose 5 points. Was that a very smart decision? Oh, but we got the rate study done, but we didn't have to raise the rates so the people didn't get upset. The same people are going to get upset at you raising the rates, so the same people are going to get upset at you when the water's brown. And the thing about it, we can usually get a well fixed in 10 days, maybe. We can usually get a tank patched up in a month. When a filtration system goes bad, are we going to live with it till we figure out how to get another one built? But you can put a little money aside that every 5-10 years you go in there and do a little rehab on that filtration system, it'll last 40 years like it was designed to last. Same thing as your car, your truck. If you never change the oil in your car, it's only going to last you a couple years if you put 30,000 miles a year on it. Same thing on these filtration systems. If you never change the filter median, never go in there and rehab it, never clean it out, it's going to last you about 10 years. And you borrowed money for it for 40 years. And you're looking for a grant to rebuild another one. And I can take you some water systems that has 3 water treatment plants. But none of them was maintained. But that was a decision made that probably didn't have the data to make that decision. It was just, oh, well, we're going to keep the rates low. When we start looking at data from the operational side, we look at water well production results, water meter readings, water well pump capacities, runtime reports, pump and motor capacities, storage tank capacities, chlorine residual reports, SCADA, supervised control data acquisition equipment. SCADA is a wonderful thing. Tells you all kind of stuff. But you'd be surprised at people that use it as no more than a pager on their side where I got a fire. They just soon carry a fire department pager. They have it for when the alarms go off, so they go running over there and, oh, I got a disaster. It's when you create it because you didn't keep the thing up and going. You didn't monitor it. On your SCADA, you ought to be able to look at how much water you produce in every minute. You know, all this information ought to be in there. You'll be able to start pumps, stop pumps. And people say, well, I don't put that on there because I'm scared somebody's going to hack into it. Yeah, there is a possibility they will hack into it, but I don't think they're really going to hack into one in Reeves, Louisiana, or wherever else. When we look at storage tank capacities, that should be something that your operator, your staff ought to be able to say, well, we got a 200,000 gallon tank over here on Elm Street and a 150,000 gallon tank over here. They ought to know that kind of information. The more information you know that you can share with the public, the more the public understands about your job. All they see is a pretty water tower until you don't paint it for 15 years. But you kept the rates low because you didn't want to tell them it's going to cost $200,000 on the cheap side to paint the tank. But now they're there wanting to know, well, you know, my son's playing on the Bengal Tigers football team, and that emblem used to be up here. It ain't up there no more. Well, we chose not to paint the tank because we're saving money. Some of these systems that chose not to paint the tank, that one painted here a few years ago, and it cost about $300,000 to paint it because they hadn't painted it in 40 years. Where other systems had been painting theirs every 10, 15 years for $60,000, $70,000 at a time. You know, it's money invested into it, but it's the image that we share. You know, when your customers go to ask you stuff about the water, this data that I'm talking about, most of your board members, even some of your operators can't even tell them how much water you produce a day. You know, we talk about the hurricanes and stuff like that there and different storm events. You should be able to tell your customers, hey, we went to 900 gallons a minute for the hurricane, and we normally produce 200 gallons a minute. You understand what I'm saying? Because you said, well, we can't raise the rates, but we don't know the data to share with our customers of what it really costs us to run our systems. We use the equipment that's put in there more as alarms than we do as operation and maintenance tools. And all this information, I'm on the board of directors of the water system in Allen Parish in Reeves. Jonette's sitting right up there. About 4 years ago, we started having them put on our financial report, how much water we produced and how much water we sold and what the loss was and the number of customers and the number of wastewater customers that we send the money to the town for. You know why? That's all data that we need to make a decision. If it ain't out there, we see it. Do you think our manager's going to sit in the office and say, well, our water loss last month was 35%? He ain't going to render that up. Ain't none of y'all's going to render that up unless you ask him for it. And if you ask him at the meeting for it, how's he? You go, well, I don't really know. You know, I'll have to get back to you on that there. Your decision makers took time to attend that meeting, usually for a minimal amount of money compared to what they pay y'all. And that's small potatoes what we ask in there. That's small. That's information though that they tell the customer, man, last month we produced 22 million gallons. We sold 15, but we had a big leak over here, whatever. The more knowledge that we have, the more information that we know, the better we can conversation with our customers and explain to them why our water bill, average water bill, is $45 a month or $80 a month or whatever it has to be. That's another thing I get aggravated with. People call and say, hey, my water bill is $72. And then you get talking to them, well, it's $28 for the water and $28 for the sewer and $12 for the garbage. That's your utility bill. That's not your water bill. Let's be honest. But you know, they not looking at the data that you provide them. Now we're going to talk about collaborative data. This is where the two groups are forced to work together. This is where management has to kind of work with the operations, and there's asset management plans. How many of y'all have an asset management plan that tells you what kind of equipment you own, where it's at, how old it is, how much money you've been spending on it recently, what it's going to cost you to replace it or rehab it in 10 years, 20 years? A risk assessment plans. How many of y'all have a risk assessment plan that you know what you're most vulnerable to or possibilities of being vulnerable to? An emergency response plan. I mean, I see my friends from up there from Cameron Parish. They have a pretty good emergency response plan. Get everything they possibly can get out of there that's mobile. So when a storm passes, they can bring it back and start over, right? And hope we have enough there to start over with. But their plan is to mobilize every movable piece of equipment they can. That's the best plan they can come up with. Because they've already tried building it 20 foot in the air. That didn't work. Complaint logs. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I ain't writing that on the complaint log because I don't want nobody to know they complain about that. Let me tell you something, folks. They complaining to you. They complaining to some of your board members. They complaining to the state representative, the state legislators, the senator, Amanda's people. You know, the thing is, usually they don't go to Facebook till after they done contacted the office a couple times. And we don't know who looks at Facebook. I know somebody in Nigeria looked at mine a couple weeks ago and put a vehicle up for sale that I don't own. I don't know where the vehicle is. And I really don't know where my Facebook is no more either. So, but what I'm getting at, folks, is that complaint log, that is valuable information. Work orders. The date they was issued and the date they was completed with signatures on it. You know, 15 years ago, I worked with a water system that they never cut off the customers because the operator said every time he went to cut somebody off, a board member would call and tell him, don't cut him off, because that's a friend of mine. And he said he didn't know what to do. I said, well, let's do, well, you work order. You got a work order issued to you? When you go out there, that board member calls, tell him that, hey, you called, told me not to cut it off, so I'm going to put it on the work order. You advised me not to cut it off, and write the date and time on there. The operator quit 2 weeks later. Because come to find out he wasn't getting the phone calls. So he had to go start cutting off the customers. He had an excuse until somebody said verify that. And that's what I'm talking about with the data. Verification of the data. Make it real. I mean, because you're going to make decisions. Your board is going to make decisions on that data. As-built plans. We had a discussion the other day. We met with one call, and they talking about an as-built plan. And I said, it's as they wished it had been built. But we got a document to start with, and we just need to maybe update it a little bit here and there. When we find something, when we expose a line and it's 10 foot from where the map says it's at, make a note on that there. Because we're not always going to be there all of our life. And what we remember, the next person has to live with. And one thing I say about a water system and a wastewater system, everything good or bad is buried, and nobody sees it again until we have an issue. We buried 90% of our stuff. Operational maintenance manuals. You should have an operation manual that when your operator quit, the next one comes in, he can take that manual, and if he's an operator, run your facility. Keep it going. He may have to get help from a neighboring system or something. But if you don't have an operation and maintenance manual, there's a very good chance he's going to come in there and start pushing buttons to try to keep it going. He's going to do the best he can. I also believe, while we're talking about this here, and this is this collaborative part, everybody ought to be cross-trained. Probably going to get in trouble with this one, but I think the clerks and the office managers ought to at least take their level 1 certification. And you're going to say, why is that? You know what the lead service line inventory is about? You do now. You didn't 6 months ago. What I'm saying is the things that sometimes the operators come there with you, I need help on, you have no idea what it's about. But if you were certified, at least you'd have a little understanding of it. If nothing else, you've collaborated with other people during the course that you can ask questions or you can reach out to other people to find out things. Too many times we try to sail the boat by ourselves when we got a team there waiting to help us. On the regulatory side, the data. And folks, this is all records we're supposed to be keeping. Applicable state and federal regulations, the Safe Drinking Water Act. Amanda talked about that a little bit. Clean Water Act, the accountability of the grade rule. When they first started talking about that there, I had some very, very mixed feelings. Because I think a lot of people do the very best they possibly can, but I also think a lot of people just get by. And I'll be honest with you, I really thought the first round of grades was going to be way more C's, D's, and F's than there was. I was kind of surprised at the amount of A's and B's that they had in there. Even kind of surprised to the point that I even questioned Blake about some of them, like, how did this happen? I would never understand this one. But, you know, sometimes we see favor in everything. You know, just some of them had really, really good water, just had poor management practices. And they got dinged on the management side. But the water, they didn't have no violations on the water side. You know, so they're them things. Sanitary surveys. That's another thing that I think every board member ought to see every sanitary survey, just so they'll be informed. Because the operator's just going to say, well, we had a sanitary survey last week and, everything was good. Oh, they did have to find something and they found a scratch in the paint and they wrote me up on that. Really? There are probably other things that led to them to look at that scratch. That's probably the most significant thing. But that needs to be addressed in writing. That just ain't something that you pick up your phone and text and say, hey, Stephen, I fixed that. Here's a picture of it. It need to be addressed in writing. It's required to be addressed in writing. But I also think that the board ought to be aware of the findings on that there, look through it so they can ask questions. I mean, to be informed. Administrative orders. That's when you really went down the list and you really just said, well, we can't do that. We ain't got the money to fix that, this, that, whatever. It's too bad for it. Audit findings. Everybody gets defensive when they find out that they've possibly done something that wasn't to Kelter. But like Mr. Mike said, call your auditor. Talk through it. Call him. Let's talk to it. And I'll be the first to admit there's some people that do things that's just intentionally wrong. But I do think that 95% or more of the people really want to do right. They just didn't understand something. They thought they was doing the right thing. And while I'm talking about the data, let me see what my next slide is. Back up. Well, I'm talking about the data. Is a ball advisory data? How many of y'all cringe to issue a ball advisory? How many of y'all believe that's your insurance policy? I'm going to tell you a little story. I've been on the West Allen Parish Water District Board since 2005. Got put on right before Hurricane Rita. We got sued twice in the middle of a construction project. One for violation of disinfection byproducts, but the construction project was to take care of that. And the other one was for excessive brown and discolored water and ball advisories, too many ball advisories. How many of y'all ever seen an attorney send you a list of things that he wants? He wanted records with dates and times on it. Data. He wanted data. So we started sending all the correspondence with the health department, all the ball advisories that we issued. The reason we issued it because we was in the middle of a construction project. All the chlorine residual information, the daily chlorine residual results. We sent all that. Same attorney represented us 2 times. The 2 lawsuits was about 18 months apart during a construction project. Both of them settled out of court. Now, our board of directors wanted to fight them in the courtroom. Thank God we had the right insurance company, and they had the right attorneys, and both of them settled out of court for a minimal amount. All this, what I'm talking about, folks, should be in your house. The problem is we let our houses get divided to where it's operations over here and management over here. There should be a room that all that information comes together, because you cannot make true financial decisions about your water system if you don't realize what the operations really cost you. And too many times we're making financial decisions based off of numbers on paper that is the best that they can produce, but we're not looking at the work orders and the different things over here that our operations people are spending $400 and $500 on stuff that we really don't need. PO systems. If you don't have a PO system, I encourage you to get your PO system in place so that we know what we buy, because it's not our money. And as I told you, I was the president of the board for several years. I'm not the president now. I stepped down in January. But what I'm saying is we make decisions that affect the public. And if we got a system, if your system has 1,000 customers and you make a decision that you spend $1,000 extra a month just because, oh, I thought it was a good deal to do it, that just costs each one of your customers $1 that month. Don't seem like much, but when you start adding up the dollars here and the dollars there for dumb decisions because we didn't look at the data, you know, it costs. I'm a type feller. I think your disconnect fee ought to be set to it generates enough money that I, as the consumer, don't have to pay for you to go out there and shut off my neighbor's water because he didn't pay his bill. And if it's costing you $60 to send a person out there and you charge him $40 and you cut off 10 of them a month, that's $200, and your customers that pay their bills on time pays that fee. When we start segregating them costs, them operational costs, when we do a rate study, when we start segregating that out, a lot of times we get information that says water revenues, and it has everything in there from disconnects, reconnects, new installs. Folks, all that needs to be separated out. So those that's requiring that extra service pays for that extra service, and those that's only using your water only pay for the water that they use it. It takes more on y'all's part. It takes more on the auditor's part. Because me and some auditors have had some very tough discussions because I don't do real good with water revenues, $400,000. I want to know how many disconnects you made and how much you generate there, how many new meters you put in, how much you generate there. Because the days of putting in a new meter for $300 are gone. The smart meter that Leslie was talking about, one of them's $250 or $60, just the meter, not counting the brass that goes along with it. The materials to put in a meter today, a smart meter usually runs about $750 to $800, just the material. That's not your manpower. And you say, oh, well, we already got a traco for town. Look to see how many times your traco's used to fix a leak, and look to see how many times it's used to put in a water meter. You're going to find out that your traco's used more installing water meters than it is fixing water leaks. But we bill it into operational costs when actually part of that should be paid for by meter installation costs. The data's there, folks. You just got to ask your people to put it in a format that you can read it. Because at the end of the ball game, we're there to protect those that can't protect themselves. The infants and children, the immunocompromised, and the elderly. The rest of us, if we use $70 worth of water a month, we just don't need to pay for it. Suck it up and pay for it. Or cut back on what we do. We offer hands-on technical assistance and training in all areas of water and sewer works at no charge. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We can't make a system accept our help. And with that, I'm going to tell y'all one little story, and I'm going to be finished. A couple years ago, Parish OEC called and said, hey, can you come help this community? And we said, yes, sir. I sent a man there that morning. They was actually meeting with the OEC that morning. And he was turned around, said, well, we got this. Went on about our business. I had him go back the next day. Oh, we got it. It's a pump failure. It's pump failure. He went back the following day. They had another one of them meetings through OEP, through the state, through the governor's office, GOSEP. And they asked him, well, we've been there 3 times. They said they got it. The next week they have a meeting, and we still ain't got no water, or half the town ain't got no water. School ain't not in. Hospital struggling. The food factory in town done shut down, and 150 people's at home. And they said, well, what y'all going to do? I said, we've been there 3 times. They told us we got it. Well, when they went to talk about the numbers it was costing the state, and that cost all of us. I said, I can have 3 people there in the morning. And the more they talked, I said, I'll have 6 of us there in the morning. I'm going myself. We got there next morning. The mayor come joined us, and the operator come joined us. The mayor, you could tell he was not on the real happy side with us. The operator showed me his production numbers. He showed me his water going out, producing 620,000 a day and pushing 619,000 out. I said, I need the last 3 months billing records from City Hall. He said, I'll go get it for you. I said, no, sir, you're not going to get it. You call and tell them I'm coming to get it. You know what his comment was to me? Anybody want to guess? Uh-oh, you fixed to figure out what's going on. In front of the clerks, I told them, I said, well, it looks like we're using about 200,000 gallons a day and the rest of it's going down the ditch somewhere. And we went and looked at all the places they told us that they thought it was going. And then we walked away and started walking up the road. And by noon that day, we found a 240-gallon-minute water leak in the bottom of a ditch. We're not there to hurt nobody, folks. We're there to try to help you all we can. We probably could have found that water leak the first day. You know, when you put 6 people on the ground and you have enough people to send, okay, go look at this leak over here they talk about, go look at this over here. I mean, we looked in the sewer system. We popped manholes half through town. And finally, I just said, there's a lot of water in that manhole, but that ain't the leak. Let's go find the leak. And we went 3 blocks up the road. And they told us, well, there's a little bit of water running in the ditch. And you get over there and look, I'm like, golly. What I'm saying, folks, the data is there. Your people know it. If he'd have compared what he was selling to what he was producing, he'd have knew how much he was losing the first day. The first day. I could tell you 1,000 stories. But I want to thank y'all for allowing me to speak today. We appreciate it. Amanda and I are pretty good friends. Leslie and I are pretty good friends. We're friends enough that I have called both of them at 8, 9 o'clock at night because the system was in trouble and I needed help. And they've answered the phone. Amanda's staff across the state has provided me the same service. But I guess usually when they see my number coming, they say, oh, it's not good. I mean, poor Jennifer Kilkin, I reminded her just the other day, I called her Mother's Day afternoon and told her, Happy Mother's Day, Miss Jen. She said, oh, Rusty, that's so sweet of you. She thought I was an angel. I said, by the way, we got an intake just fell in the lake. Ruined her Mother's Day supper. But thank y'all for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We so much appreciate this panel this morning. Thank you so much for spending time out of your very busy schedules to be with us. We love this information. We will post this information on our website. Y'all know that we post the recordings of it and the information. The handouts have already been posted on the website. You had those earlier in the week and last week, but the video recordings, it takes us a little bit to go through. So give us a couple of weeks and we'll post those. And the nice thing about that is for people who weren't able to make it, they can make it. But very good information. And thanks to Mike Battle for putting this panel together. This was just like a pipe dream, and to have it come true and provide this very valuable information in Louisiana is really great. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for participating in our fall CLGE program. We hope you have really enjoyed the information that we have provided for you. You will be getting a survey. Be sure to fill it out because, like I keep saying, we use that to plan the next program. Speaking of the next program, the dates are March 12th to 13th, and we will be, that's a Wednesday and a Thursday. we will be returning to Baton Rouge. We tend to go between Baton Rouge and Lafayette for the convenience of people who want to attend in person, and it will be held at the Pennington Biomedical Center. So that's a new place for us in Baton Rouge. So March 12th and 13th, you can put that on your calendar. And as it gets closer, so we'll have saved the date on our website. As it gets closer, we'll work on fleshing out those programs for you, the sessions, but it's really all based on the information that you provide to us. And I know that there are many of us, I'm one of those who have to have continuing education to keep up some certifications. And I know there's various kinds of certifications in our audience. So Liz will be assembling all of that information and getting those out to you. Give her about 3 weeks to get all of that. She needs about a day or two just to take a breath. So, and speaking of Liz, I just want to acknowledge all the people that make this program happen. Liz Martin, our CLGE coordinator, has done a great job with this program. And so let's give Liz a great big round of applause. She moves heaven and earth, answers every detailed question, and then she still beats herself up because there were things that she didn't do. She is remarkable. I also want to acknowledge our IT team back at the Legislative Auditor's Office, Craig Wiseman and Keith Duke. We act like it's no big deal when we say, hey, can you post this on the website? Hey, open registration. But those guys work behind the scenes to make all of that happen and work out a lot of technology glitches. We also want to thank Sunflower Development for their continued live streaming. Ever since we've been live streaming this program, they've been our partner. They provide great technical service, and we thank you so much for that. Thank you, Marshall and Brian and all of the Sunflower Development team. All right, and with that, Lizzie Scheck-Snyder also, I don't want to forget Lizzie, who it makes the program run smoothly, handles our sound, and just adds so much expertise that we all need. So there's a team back at the Legislative Auditor's Office that puts this program on together. So thank you so much for that. And now you are armed with knowledge. Go forth and conquer. And safe travels.